a temporary ceasefire. Do you consider it as an achievement for the Biden administration?
I'll have to wait and see. It was orchestrated, I'm told, by Amos Hochstein and others. That doesn't give me a lot of hope. And the fact that Bibi Netanyahu's on one side of the agreement doesn't give me a lot of hope either. In fact, I'm already hearing that there are some real fights going on within the Knesset and within his cabinet. The Knesset is insisting on seeing every detail before they will approve it. He would probably go ahead and approve it anyway. He doesn't seem to pay much attention to the Knesset. He does to his cabinet because that keeps him out of jail. I think what will happen if it goes through, it's supposed to be announced tonight, joint France, Lebanon, whatever. If it goes through, I think he will have demanded and will want and will insist on and may break the agreement very quickly in order to achieve complete control. In other words, if he wants to move the people back into the north, he will move the people back into the north, even though it's been pretty much figured out analytically that he can't do that. Not even with the agreement that we're looking at right now. And I haven't seen it, so I don't know how to comport that. But so he'll do whatever he has to do to get what he wants, which is principally to get those people back into the north, those people who left their homes, if there are any of them left to move back. And if that isn't achievable, he'll break the agreement, or he'll act as if the agreement included his right to do that. So I suspect that by that progress, they have digressed majorly in terms of casualties and impact that even though 2006 should have shown them, at least that should have shown them, they weren't ready for. So he wants this cessation, if you will, at least for a temporary period. But like I said, he'll insist on whatever he wants. And if he doesn't get it, it'll be broken immediately.
As I see, I'm checking the points in this ceasefire and in this agreement. It's not talking about sending Israeli people to the northern part of Israel. It seems that it's not part of this ceasefire, part of this
No,
agreement.
it's part of his plan.
Yeah, and
That's
here
his.
is
That's his. I think that's his real motive, because it makes it look as if, very graphically, as if Israel's not a safe place for Jews. That's true across Israel now, from Haifa all the way up to the north. But he's got to make this statement that it is categorically, or he feels like he's failed.
here is Israeli media asking Israeli people if Israel was able to win the conflict in the southern part of Lebanon. It's 26% of these people voted for, they believe that Israel has won the conflict, and 61% that they don't feel that Israel has won the war. And it means that they've been defeated in the southern part of Lebanon.
Right.
In the eyes of Israelis. What's your take on what has happened and the motives beyond sending their people to the northern part of Israel? What is the reality of battleground, or what we've seen so far? What's your take on what has happened?
Well, it depends on what you started the war for. And I know what Bibi started the war for, to stay in power. So if you're looking at a strategic objective, it's his objective to have stayed in power, and he stayed in power. If you're looking at the number of Israelis who know the truth or intuit the truth, and you just saw it on that graph, I'm surprised it isn't higher, because they have not won. They have not even checked Hezbollah. They've killed some leaders, and they've bombed the bejesus out of Beirut and other facilities. I understand they're bombing Tyre again. And that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to destroy, that's a secondary purpose, is to destroy everything Lebanon has in the way of economic capacity, so it'll never be able to compete with Israel, not in the next decade or two. The explosion in the harbor at Beirut wasn't enough to do that. They wanted to make sure they put their 10 cents worth in. That's, Israel always does that every time it attacks Lebanon. So I think the Israelis that voted for they haven't won are right, but they aren't looking at the right objective. The objective was to keep Bibi in power, and he succeeded in doing that. And if he has to break the ceasefire to continue to do that, he will do so.
How is it going to influence the situation of Gazans and Palestinians? I'm talking about the West Bank and Gaza.
Should it last, I'm saying what I'm saying, but I do hope it lasts. If it lasts, then it's going to make their morale plummet. And I'm sure that's probably in Bibi Netanyahu's mind too, because they have lost their only ally, if you will, who's doing anything significant other than perhaps Iran. And I still think we're waiting for the blow from Iran. Now, they have said that they will be the guarantor of Hezbollah's portion of the ceasefire. So that means when Bibi inevitably breaks the ceasefire because it's not going in the way that he wanted it to, Iran will be free to do what they want to do and will probably do so forthwith. I suspect very quickly. They probably got the guns primed right now, as it were, and they're ready to go. If they are agreeing to this in good faith and saying we'll back Hezbollah up in terms of policing their actions in accordance with the ceasefire, and then Bibi violates it, then the next thing Bibi will get is a massive strike from Iran. So we'll just have to see.
How do you think that the Biden administration is trying to facilitate the situation in the Middle East for the Trump administration? Or maybe they're afraid of Donald Trump with his administration?
Well, given some of the people that Donald Trump has appointed to his administration and their remarks in the last 96 hours, there isn't a whole hair's breadth of difference between Joe Biden, Jake Sullivan, Tony Blinken, and Donald Trump and his crew on anything, it looks like.
Yeah. Here is Donald Trump put a director to counter terrorism. His name is Gorka. And here is what he said, Larry, in terms of what
Trump administration swinging sanctions that brought the regime practically to the brink of economic collapse, and that's when the people can take over. In the meantime, the International Court of Human Rights has put out a warrant for Bibi Netanyahu and his Minister of Defense because Jews, right? Jews. How interesting that the Arab wife of George Clooney was heavily involved in that decision. The left, they're the anti-Semites. No, sorry. They're the Jew haters. Just look at the campuses across America. Look at the squad. We stand by you, Israel. Do what needs to be done, especially when it comes to the biggest sponsor of state terrorism, Iran. God bless. Tune in tonight. Amazing show.
Larry,
this is what I mean. This is what I mean by Trump spokespeople. Scary people.
It's unbelievable. And do you see any sort of hope in this administration so far with these people?
Well, let's just take what he just said. Now, I really don't want to do this because he's an idiot. He's a stark raving lunatic, an idiot.
But he's going to be
he's got a portfolio with Trump, but Trump's a stark raving lunatic about half the time too. But let's just parse what he said. First of all, the greatest motivator to anti-Semitism on the face of the globe is Bibi Netanyahu. I have had Jewish rabbis from California to New York to Paris tell me that. He's the greatest instigator of hatred of Jews in the world today. Bibi Netanyahu and what he's doing in Gaza in particular. So that's the first thing he's dead wrong on. The second thing he's dead wrong on is what's going to happen when he gets into position, because it's implied by what he says. What's going to happen is the confines of government and the power that it will be arrayed against him in trying to do what he wants to do will be formidable. It's going to be that way with the entire Trump administration. If it boils down to the essence of that confrontation, we're going to have a civil war. No question in my mind. I'm as sure of that as I would have been, I think, in April of 1861, when the Confederates fired on the federal fort of Fort Sumter in South Carolina. We're going to have a civil war because there are people in this administration, if they're given their way, are going to start that civil war. There's no question about it in my mind. It is going to happen. Whether it's a civil war that actually brings violence and bloodshed is another thing, but it is going to be a war. It's going to be a war between those things that our founders set up in the government to check and balance any aspect of that government. Oh God, now all three branches of which are in the hands of the Republicans, including the Supreme Court. Thank you very much. But nonetheless, there are checks and balances still existent, powerful ones in this government. He's going to run into every one of them, not least of which is going to be the people who start to abandon him when they realize how many lies he told during the campaign, for example, about Ukraine, apparently. He's lining up right now. His people are lining up. Marco Rubio, all the good guys, Pete Hegseth, they're all lining up essentially with the Biden administration on the situation in Ukraine. And that is a lie to what? A third, 2/3, I don't know, of his voters, because they voted for him because he said he would end the war in Ukraine. Well, he's already reneging on that, if there's any truth to what these people are saying, and any truth to anything Trump says anytime. But as I've said before, too, these people will all be gone. In the first year, they'll all be gone. So it remains to be seen what Trump is going to do that's any different from what he did in his first term, which was almost nothing, really. And what Biden would have done, or what Biden encumbers him with before he leaves, I have no idea. I can't predict that, because Trump will not let you predict. That's one of the scariest things about Trump. One of the things great powers have to do in the world, with very little exception, and those exceptions have to be very strategic and very carefully executed, they have to be predictable. More so than any other country on the face of the earth, a great power has to be predictable. 3 or 4 countries like that today, they have to be predictable. Look at Xi Jinping, very predictable. Look at Putin, explicitly predictable. You look at India, predictable. You know, look at Brazil, it's predictable. It had some fluctuations every now and then. Lula has the same problems he's had before. He's got this Bolsonaro type array against him, still fighting. But you have to have predictability if you are possessive of nuclear weapons and you are so-called great power. We have none. We're like a blob of mercury floating across the world scene on a 24/7 basis, with Donald Trump pushing the mercury around. I don't know what that means, Nima, except it's going to be a painful 4 years, very likely.
Your take, Scott. Do you think that the Biden administration is achieving something in the Middle East?
We'll see. I mean, time will tell. I would say that the Biden administration only negotiates on something that is to Israel's benefit. Israel's not being asked to make any sacrifices at all. Israel lost this fight. Understand that. Hezbollah is actually the responsible party here by allowing, I think, the Amal militia, or the Speaker of the Parliament, to negotiate on their behalf. They want the needless slaughter of Lebanese civilians to stop. Hezbollah is a political party. It's not just a resistance movement, and they have a responsibility to the Lebanese population. And Israel has shown an absolute disregard for the lives of innocent Lebanese. They've killed over 3,000 of them so far since since October 7th, but most of those deaths have taken place recently. A horrific slaughter. And Hezbollah has said, we're not going to sacrifice, the Lebanese people. And so there's a potential for a ceasefire. The kicker is, will Israel agree to, not being allowed to retaliate? Israel has been, for the last decades, bombing Lebanon at will, doing whatever they want. They treat Lebanon as their shooting range. Do you honestly think that Israel, if given the opportunity, let's say that intelligence was collected about a high value target moving around in Lebanon, that Israel would say, oh well, we're not going to attack that. The other thing is that Lebanon, the Hezbollah, this is a different situation than 2006. 2006, it was important to get Hezbollah to pull back behind the Litani River because the primary weapon that Hezbollah used was the Katyusha rocket. It had limited range. So if you pull back Hezbollah to, past the Litani River, you've removed Hezbollah's ability to strike Israel. Hezbollah has rockets and missiles who are already operating north of the Litani River. So Hezbollah has not lost its potential to strike Israel. And Israel understands that. I just think that the Israelis are very poorly disciplined. They have they have a political element that views this as a mistake, that there's a need to defeat Hezbollah. This is Ben-Gvir especially saying this is a huge mistake to do this. And that the temptation will come as Hezbollah will rearm. Notice that the ceasefire agreement does not talk about, the ability for Hezbollah to exist or to receive weapon shipments. So Hezbollah will rearm. Iran will continue to do this. And what happens when Israel detects this and believes they have to interdict that? That's the end of the ceasefire. And then Israel will be the one who broke the ceasefire. So I think that this is Netanyahu signs off on this. It'll be because he is desperate politically to be seen as achieving something. And he will make the case that Israeli civilians can return to their homes. But as Ben-Gvir, this is one of the few times I agree with Ben-Gvir, as he said, nobody believes that the situation's over. And so whether or not they'll be able to get the people to come back, get the economy returned to normal, etc. Remember, at the same time this is happening, and this is a self-inflicted wound on the part of Israel. They didn't have to go into southern Lebanon to begin with. And understand that they didn't win. I mean, this ceasefire is in many ways a victory for Hezbollah. The goal and objective of Israel going in was to absolutely destroy and defeat Hezbollah. That hasn't happened. Israel hasn't been able to take a single village. They've suffered, high casualties. Hezbollah has been hurt. There's no doubt about that. Hezbollah has been hurt. But I think the big thing here isn't the pain that was done to Hezbollah, but the pain that was being dished out to the innocent Lebanese civilians. And Hezbollah will emerge from this with its reputation intact as a political entity that did what was right for the people of Lebanon. It's a big deal for Hezbollah to pull back behind the Litani River, a very big deal. But again, the nature of their weaponry now is such that they don't need to stay in that area, and so they've made compromises. But I think Hezbollah understands that this is done to preserve Netanyahu's position politically. It's not done to create the conditions for genuine peace. Gaza is still very much problematic for Israel. The Ansarallah in Yemen continues to successfully blockade the southern port of Eilat, and Iran is hovering over the horizon with 1,000 missiles that are ready to rain death and destruction down on Israel anytime Iran decides to do so. So this is an act of desperation by Netanyahu, who had said, "I'm going to defeat Hezbollah." Well, he hasn't defeated Hezbollah. He's doing the only thing that he can do at this point in time is seek a ceasefire. But I'm under no illusion that Israel will abide by the ceasefire, because again, I'll point out that Hezbollah will continue to rearm. Israeli intelligence will detect this, and then the temptation to strike is going to be too much.
Let's just remember what were the conditions before going to the southern part of Lebanon. We had the assassination of the Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah together with his commanders, and on the other hand, Israelis we're talking about more than 80% of their ammunition, missiles were destroyed, and that's why they have decided to go to the southern part of Lebanon. Do you think that the nature of the conflict was one of the major issues for Netanyahu? That's why he's deciding to go with ceasefire.
Netanyahu was beat by Hezbollah, straight up defeated by Hezbollah. He didn't achieve anything that he wanted. Only by slaughtering innocent Lebanese civilians was he able to get Hezbollah, the political party, to agree to a ceasefire, because Hezbollah has a duty to the people of Lebanon. I mean, that's what resonates throughout this, is that they have a duty to the people of Lebanon. Up until now, the Lebanese know exactly who's responsible for the death and destruction that's been meted out in Beirut and elsewhere. It's Israel. Israel has not won any hearts and souls doing this. But if Hezbollah didn't take advantage of this opportunity to negotiate a ceasefire, to bring a respite to the civilians who are paying such a high price, then Hezbollah would start to suffer politically. And Hezbollah is about, being a part of the Lebanese political framework, fabric. One of the goals of Israel has always been to get Hezbollah unplugged from Lebanon politically, to delegitimize Hezbollah in the eyes of the Lebanese people. And if Hezbollah failed to follow through with this potential of a ceasefire, that would further that objective. But what this has done now is it's entrenched Hezbollah in the minds of the Lebanese people as a party that cares about their security, cares about doing the right thing, cares about Gaza and the Palestinians. This is a smart move on the part of Hezbollah, but they haven't been defeated at all, not even close. Israel did some damage. There's no doubt about that. They killed Nasrallah. They killed senior leadership. They undoubtedly succeeded in hitting, some ammunition storage, some missile sites, but 80% of Hezbollah's infrastructure remains intact, untouched, and Hezbollah can continue to do this all day long, every day, every week, for longer than Israel can survive. And that's the reality that Netanyahu had to bring to bear. He is in a state of political crisis right now for any number of reasons. One of which is the failure. He got Israel involved in this major conflict with Hezbollah, and he's not winning. The Israeli army is being physically beat on the battlefield. And the Hezbollah is hitting Israel. It's not just the northern settlements, it's hitting Tel Aviv on a regular basis. And there's nothing Israel can do to stop this. So this is in many ways a defeat, a military and political defeat for Netanyahu and Israel, but they're going to spin it as a victory. But again, I don't know how long this can last, because Israel doesn't want peace. Netanyahu wants a political respite. Netanyahu will take a breath, will try to regroup, try to strengthen his position. But the moment he feels secure, and his intelligence people come in and say, hey, we got rockets coming in, we got this happening, this is the location, he'll order the strike. And then the ceasefire is over. And then Hezbollah will rain death and destruction back on the settlements, and people will flee again, and it will be even worse for Netanyahu. But I'm happy for the people of Lebanon that they can rest in peace now. I mean, when I mean rest in peace, I don't mean dead in their graves. I mean, for those who have survived this horrible mass murder by Israel, that they'll be able to go to bed at night and not worry about an Israeli bomb taking down their house or blowing up the house of their neighbors. They can focus on on surviving. We have a lot of Lebanese Christians that have Christmas coming up. They might be able to celebrate the Christmas holidays without the fear of imminent death. It's a good thing for the people of Lebanon that the fighting is stopping. But anybody who believes for a second that Israel's serious about long-term peace with Hezbollah, think again.
How do you see these people working with Donald Trump? If at the end of the day, if you remember, we've talked about it, that Donald Trump wants some sort of peace in the Middle East. He's not interested in a war in the Middle East. But how is he able to do that with these people?
Administration swing sanctions that brought the regime practically to the brink of economic collapse, and that's when the people can take over. In the meantime, the International Court of Human Rights has put out a warrant for Bibi Netanyahu and his Minister of Defense, because Jews, right? Jews How interesting that the Arab wife of George Clooney was heavily involved in that decision. The left, they're the anti-Semites. No, sorry. They're the Jew haters. Just look at the campuses across America. Look at the squad. We stand by you, Israel. Do what needs to be done, especially when it comes to the biggest sponsor of state terrorism, Iran.
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to be as blunt as possible. Donald Trump is either a fool or a liar. He ran on a promise not to go to war. He said, I won't get you in war. We'll have peace. Peace will break out. He made certain statements about, talking about normalizing relations with Iran, not seeking regime change, looking for the potential to lift sanctions. He made the same statement about Russia and Ukraine. And then he hires a national security advisor, Michael Waltz, who's just a lunatic on both issues. A Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who is a lunatic on both issues. And then this Sebastian Gorka comes in, who's literally insane. I mean, the man is, you saw this. This is not the language of somebody who's supposed to be advising the president whose policies are leaning towards peace. He's a warmonger. So is Michael Waltz. So is Marco Rubio. And Donald Trump is making the same mistake that he made last time, surrounding himself with people who seek confrontation. It's not a mistake if you do it twice. Fool me once, shame on me. But fool me twice, won't get fooled again. That's making fun of George W. Bush. But this is stunning. This appointment and the fact that he's allowing Gorka to say these things now. Because remember, you saw Mike Huckabee come on and say, I'm not the ambassador. I haven't been done it. I don't speak on behalf of the administration. But that he knows he's going to be, put before the Senate for confirmation here. So he's very careful in what he says. This is a good thing, peace, da-da-da. Gorka, because he's not going to be confirmed, and neither is Michael Waltz, they're freer to speak. And so they're speaking the truth. Never believe someone when they are being confirmed, because they will lie to the Senate to get confirmed. But when you don't have to be confirmed, you don't care. And so you say what you say. And what he's saying, again, if the president-elect didn't want him to say it, he'd fire him right now. I would. If I ran on a platform of peace and Sebastian Gorka went out and made these kind of statements. Sebastian Gorka is speaking on behalf of Donald Trump right now. Literally, he's speaking on behalf of Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump doesn't fire him, that implication is that's Donald Trump's wrong. Gorka called Putin a thug. How do you expect to meet with Vladimir Putin? I mean, one of Trump's things was, I'm going to meet with Putin. I'm going to sort this all out. Putin ain't going to take a meeting with you. Not when your guys are calling him a thug and all this kind of stuff. You have Michael Waltz saying that I've met with Blinken, I've talked with Sullivan, and we are on the same page with Ukraine, the same page with Russia, the same page with Israel. So Donald Trump is either a fool or a liar. And I'll go with liar. The American people can't trust this man. He lied to them, straight up lied to them. Told them he was a candidate of peace, told them he was seeking to avoid war. Straight up liar. Because if he wasn't a liar, he'd fire Michael Waltz and he'd fire Sebastian Gorka right now for saying things that are out of line with his true policy path.
How do you see the situation with Gaza right now? If they go with the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel, is that going to bring some sort of hope for the situation in Gaza? Maybe talk about Gaza after achieving a ceasefire, or they're going to withdraw their troops from Lebanon and send them to Gaza?
Oh, they'll withdraw their troops from Lebanon, send them to Gaza, and you'll get a dozen more suicides. You'll get more desertions. Gaza's a hellscape. Hamas hasn't been beaten. I'm not saying that Hamas hasn't been hurt. I think they have. But the difference is that the plight of the Palestinian people now is, the sacrifices they're making. The Palestinian people know that if they quit on Gaza and accept a ceasefire that has them leaving, they'll never come back, and that's the end of a Palestinian state. And that's what Israel wants. So the Palestinian people understand exactly what's at stake here. It's not nice. It's horrible. It's genocidal. But I don't see Hamas quitting anytime soon. They may seek a ceasefire to trade hostages for a genuine ceasefire, but Israel won't accept that. So Hamas will continue to struggle. And I think, unfortunately, this comes down to a battle of the clock. What's going to happen first? The absolute exhaustion of Hamas, which will lead to their defeat, or the collapse of Israel, because Israel is literally collapsing as we speak. Things that'll factor in on that is the attitude of the international community. Right now, Israel has lost the international community. That's manifested in the ICC warrant. That's manifested in the International Court of Justice findings that Israel is a genocidal state. More and more nations around the world are cutting diplomatic relations, blocking trade, and voicing support for Palestine. So from a Hamas perspective, you've got momentum, favoring you in the international community. You just need to survive. And from the Israeli perspective, momentum in the international community is galloping away, and your country is falling apart. And so it's a race against the clock. Because ultimately they want to destroy Hamas and bring an end to Palestinian statehood. But as they balance what's happening to their country, to Israel, with the inability to achieve victory against Hamas, Israel may be compelled out of just basic survival instinct to seek a ceasefire that keeps Hamas in place, similar to the ceasefire that they have in Lebanon that keeps Lebanon in place. And then if Hamas stays in place, though, now the world has to act on its desire for a Palestinian state. And Israel's trapped in a two-state solution it doesn't want. And then thus begins a process that will inevitably lead to the collapse of that. The emergence of a single-state solution is the only acceptable solution. And that'll be the end of Israel. So it's a race against the clock. I'm not saying that Hamas is guaranteed victory, far from it. I'm just saying that Hamas is far from being defeated at this point in time. Oh, for Pam Bondi, too, just to remind you, I support Hamas. Come after me. Take me away. Try it.